Some people think that Buddhism is a gloomy religion because it talks about suffering all the time. The Buddha did teach that all life is suffering, and even the small happinesses we do have don't last forever. Yeah? So friends can turn into enemies, peace can turn into war, and wealth can crumble like in a financial crash overnight. In other words, the whole of life is quite uncertain, rather shaky, and the future is really unpredictable. It would feel a bit like what these men must feel in these little boats being tossed about on the ocean. Yeah, their future looks rather uncertain, doesn't it? So that's the picture, and it is rather bleak, isn't it? It makes life sound like a really heavy burden that no one would wish to have. So why did the Buddha begin by talking about suffering? Suffering is his starting point. You know, if he expressed his views online today, he probably wouldn't go viral, because even though we all know what suffering is, I guess we have the feeling that if we talk about it, it just makes things worse. But the Buddha did begin by talking about suffering. And the English word suffering that we're using here actually covers a whole range of different types of experience. So grief, loss, bereavement, stress, distress, anxiety, fear, disillusionment, pain, and a general unsatisfactoriness about life. So that means the word suffering here covers physical pain, emotional pain, and spiritual pain, all manifestations of pain, if you like. So the Buddha believed that unless we begin by acknowledging this basic experience of life, then we won't be motivated to follow a spiritual path at all. We won't be looking for anything different, right? We'll think that life is fine the way it is. So for him, the experience of suffering is the starting point of the spiritual search. It's because life doesn't really give us what we want that we look for something deeper. And this is what the Four Noble Truths are about. Whenever we experience suffering, we need to ask ourselves what the causes of suffering are. Because if we understand its causes, then we can tackle those causes and stop suffering from occurring. That's the logic here. So in other words, Buddhists don't passively accept suffering as something inevitable, something fated, or something that's beyond human control altogether. They believe that the causes of suffering are in our hands, because by reducing greed, hatred, and prejudice, which are the causes of suffering according to the Buddha, then we actually have the power, gradually, to bring our experience of suffering to an end. And this is the path that leads to nirvana, which is the complete ending of suffering. So if we put suffering in context, we can see that Buddhism isn't gloomy at all, because it teaches a way to freedom from suffering, and that is the whole point. A way to attain nirvana, which is a stable, lasting happiness that does not depend on any causes and conditions, any external circumstances, any other people. In a nutshell, we'll continue to suffer as long as we don't understand and accept reality as it is, and as long as we think we are the centre of the universe. But by softening and expanding our way of seeing the world, we can transform our entire experience of life into one of wisdom and love.